Hello, I am still James Snap Jr., and I'm still giving a series of lectures on the King James Bible. Well, mainly the New Testament of the King James. And some of the criticisms that have come out against it. Daniel Wallace has said that he tries to justify the removal of some of the King James material, whole verses in some cases, like the ending of Mark, the story of the woman caught in adultery, Luke 22:33-34, where Jesus says, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do." He tries to justify erasing passages like that by saying the textual evidence shows him both the scribes had a strong tendency to add rather than subtract. Well, I don't know what university he's been living in lately, because James Royce, in his book, came to the opposite conclusion. Now, Griesbach's old canon to prefer the shorter reading is well known. But what many people like Dan Wallace seem to overlook is that Griesbach has always, since it was issued, qualified his canon very, very thoroughly, listing a number of important exceptions, and those should not be overlooked. But if you read Biblica's dismissal of those verses, you'll see that apparently it has been overlooked, and Royce's research has been ignored, or just never paid attention to begin with. So let's reconsider what he said. Now, if Daniel Wallace really thought that this strong tendency should be mechanically applied, he would adopt the missing text in the 650 places where it is shorter than its Alexandrian rival reading. But let's ask ourselves this question. Are the compilers of the revised text, guys like Bruce Metzger, Kurt Aland, so forth, are they objectively following the best manuscripts? Now, Dan wrote, "Those scholars who seem to be excising many of your favorite passages from the New Testament are not doing so out of spite, but because such passages are not found in the better and more ancient manuscripts." This phrase, the better and more accurate manuscripts, comes up in his writings again and again and again. You've probably seen it in your footnotes if you have an NIV or ESV, or perhaps an NLV or New Revised. Now, maybe when he refers to those scholars, he might be referring to the the atheist, Bart Ehrman, in passages like Mark 1:41 and Luke 22:43-44. Now, I'm not so naive as to imagine that Dr. Ehrman is entirely agenda-free in his effort to promote the idea that Mark depicted Jesus as easily angered, and that Luke depicted Jesus as an unfailingly super stoic. In addition, Wallace's claim about better and more ancient manuscripts is false where some manuscripts are concerned, where some variants are concerned. 1 Corinthians 14:34-35 is very well attested in all Greek manuscripts of the book. But Gordon Fee and others who believed that all church officers should be open to women consider it an interpolation. And so Gordon Fee, and of course he's dead now, so there's no way he would respond, so bear with me. Gordon Fee thought the interpretation, and therefore he allows the ordination of women. Now, Rosario Butterfield has said the ordination of women and the ordination of homosexuals all comes from the same hermeneutic, the same interpretation, the approach. Moving on, though. Luke 22:43-44 is supported by Justin Martyr and other writers in the 100s. But this testimony is dismissed on highly speculative grounds. Also, if they're so concerned that they want to follow the earliest manuscripts, why did they ignore or dismiss or say in 2 Peter 3:10, all manuscripts are wrong, they've all been corrupted, and we should go with a reading there that is not supported by any Greek manuscript? That is what they do in the new edition of the Net Text compilation. Now you might think, well, James, I'm sure these things are important, but they don't sound important. They don't really affect doctrine, do they? This is one reason why people ignore the work of textual criticism. That's why I can send an article off to raise attention, and it gets sent back saying, oh, well, this sounds too complicated. People won't like what they're saying. They won't understand. In other words, you people are just too dumb or too distracted to really realize when somebody changes the text of the Bible to really bother paying attention. Well, I think you're smart enough to, though, and that's why I'm here telling you. Dr. Wallace says it has been repeatedly affirmed that no doctrine of Scripture has been affected by these textual differences. Now, elsewhere, he's tweaked that claim by referring to the cardinal doctrines and plausible variants. I wonder if he included the doctrine of inerrancy among the doctrines to which he refers, or if he just calls it peripheral. In the same manuscripts that he considers the most reliable, Codex Vaticanus and Codex Sinaiticus, their text in Matthew 27:49 says that when Jesus was speared before he died, and then John says the opposite, that he was speared after he died. And in both cases, blood water flows forth. Now, a body can't have blood water flow forth both before and after he dies, and be speared in both cases. So this textual variant introduces a contradiction with the timing between Matthew 27:49 and John 19:33-34. John explicitly says the spearing comes after his death. So I invite Dr. Wallace to please explain to his students, or to his listeners, to those hearing him speak, how does this variant in the best manuscripts, a variant which Hort, the most influential compiler of the revised text in the 1800s, Hort regarded this as plausibly original. How could this be embraced without abandoning the doctrine of inerrancy? Now keep in mind, Dr. Wallace taught for years at Dallas Theological Seminary. You can go to their website today and see them regard inerrancy as an essential for students and for faculty, which Dr. Wallace was. Now, let's also consider, is textual stability important? Because we have one of these. Every edition that comes out, not every edition, but the important ones, they're different. That's why they make new ones. If you look in this and look in the back, there's a list of the variants that have changed from previous editions. Now, Dr. Wallace says that the TR, he says the TR has undergone 3 revisions, incorporating more than 100,000 changes. That is extremely misleading. Changes in spelling, such as a change from CITIE to CITY, yes, those have occurred. And the King James text was changed from one typeface to another. And various printing errors in the 1611 edition were corrected. But the number of actual sense-impacting alterations is nowhere near 100,000. It is less than 1,000. So Dr. Wallace is not totally wrong, but he is 99% wrong. And he needs to be held accountable for that. I believe that his lectures should be withdrawn if people don't want to keep on misleading their listeners. Meanwhile, how many changes in the revised text will be encountered in the future? In the Gospel text alone, between the 25th and 27th editions of this, there were over 400. We'll just have to wait and see how they keep on changing the Bible. Now, one objection that comes up against the King James often is, what about its obscure terminology? Dr. Wallace said, well, the King James contains 300 words that no longer mean what they meant in 1611. And Mark Ward says this word claims similar, that mean the similar things. False friends. His first example is the word suffer, as it's used in Matthew 19:14, where Jesus says, suffer little children to come unto me. Now, let's think about what the word suffer means, and what it means in context. In 1611, suffer could mean permit or allow. Like when we have the movie Return of the King, some of you may have seen it, where Aragorn says to the Ghost King, you shall suffer me. It doesn't mean you're going to suffer in agony or torment. It means you will allow me. So, if a modern movie can use it this way, why is it so awful? Such a, what are we all gasping? Because the King James uses it that way. People have brains and can use them to determine the context. We're not as dumb as these scholars seem to think. Now, you can simply pick up a dictionary, like your Merriam-Webster Best Pocket Dictionary, and you'll see in just the little one, the Best Pocket, the one you hold in your pocket, the big red one and the little one too. They both include the word permit as a definition of suffer, and also in the definition of study is apply attention and mind to the subject. So with suffer and study, it is not beyond the ability of the average person to comprehend what these things mean. I know if you're stupid and want to stay stupid and never use tools, don't have dictionaries, if you don't have the internet to look things up, yes, you will misinterpret things. Just like you would misinterpret the back of a cereal box. But if you apply yourself, you'll understand what these things mean. Dr. Wallace is asked, should we really embrace the Bible as the best translation when it uses language that not only clearly understood anymore, but in fact has been times perverted and twisted? Well, to those who want to misuse something, or who want to misuse it and misinterpret it, nothing is safe. Okay? So the problem isn't inherently the King James, but in the mind of the person using it. You have to apply yourself. You have to study. No translation is impervious to misinterpretation and abuse. And all Bible translations can be improved and supplemented with explanatory notes and glossaries. Also, the New Testament itself affirms in 2 Peter 3:16, Peter said, Paul's writings contain some things that are hard to understand. So why is this a bad thing? This is an invitation to the reader, dig deeper, become smarter, learn. So it's rather problematic to say, as Dr. Wallace does, that something is flawed just because it's hard to understand. That doesn't fly. You could ask also, if you're going to say, we could play the what about this game, saying, well, what about modern translations? Do they convey the meaning of the original text very much more clearly? The King James, when it comes to pronouns, is much clearer. You'll notice that the King James uses the ancient Jacobean language, or Elizabethan, saying thy for singular, and thee, thou, thy, thee, thou, and you, ye, your. You is plural, thee is singular. It matches the Greek. In a modern language, you lose that. So this is an area where the English language itself has gone backwards. and is less precise than Greek. It's amazing that I haven't seen any protest from Dr. Wallace against the message. But here are some things in the message that brought into the New Testament. Think about how, and ask yourself, I'm going to read this list. As I do so, ask yourself, would anyone in the first century use this term? Pet canary, house of cards, casseroles, black magic, put the screws to the man, helter-skelter, caught red-handed in the act of adultery, spotlight, the town was buzzing, potentates meet for summit talks, his underdog brother, corkscrew, English, a real bad apple, torpor, paraphernalia, Band-Aid, not bandage, the brand name, Band-Aid, telescope, microscope, broccoli, addendum, sitting ducks, millennia, iron out the differences, the anarchist, dog-eat-dog, adrenaline, and galaxies. Now, all these terms are used in Eugene Peterson's The Message. I have not heard a peep out of any scholar like Daniel Wallace against them. Peterson puts a spotlight, a telescope, and a microscope in the New Testament, and Daniel Wallace is worried about the King James using the phrase strain on a gnat. The phrase strain on a gnat is not nonsense. It can simply mean a person obtains a strainer at the sight of a gnat in his drink. But suppose Dr. Wallace's preference for the phrase strain on a gnat is accepted. That is, after all, how the Geneva Bible rendered the word Lizades. That is a gnat, compared to the anachronistic camels in the Message. By the way, in my copy of the Message, it still says, "This delights the Master, no end," in Colossians 3:20. Colossians 3:20 still has the word "to" missing. Now, this is a trivial error, but why has Dr. Wallace allowed it to stand if he is concerned about little things like straight at versus straight out? I cannot believe Dr. Wallace's claim that the King James Version has far more drastically altered the scriptures than have modern translations, because I believe my eyes as I read the multitude of mistranslations, omissions, and insertions in the Message. And in my next talk, I will discuss 7 miscellaneous points. That's all for now. Thank you for listening. Bye. Please like and subscribe. And please share. Bye.